and welcome to another episode of the Marco Podcast.
On last week's episode, we talked about steps 1 and 2 of event planning, which were setting your goals and objectives along with setting your event budget. This week's episode, we are going to talk about picking a date and a venue along with booking your speakers, your DJ, your caterers, and any other vendors that you will need for your event. One thing that I really just want to make sure that I put out there is that when planning an event, the further out that you can plan it, the better, because things book up fast. And with events, there's seasons for things. And what I mean by seasons is that you have prom season, you have graduation season, you have wedding season. And so those are things that you have to take into consideration when you're planning your event. And those are the places that are going to book up further out in advance. So if you're a business and you're trying to plan an event during prom season, you may have a hard time. You may have a hard time is a more upscale event that you want to have at some place that people will have a prom at, and an event, plan a graduation party. The further out that you can do it, the more likely that you are to get the date that you want, the time that you want, and the venue that you want. And when choosing a date, you're either going to be able to be flexible with the date or you're not going to be able to be flexible with the date. And what I mean by that is if you're having a graduation party, you may not be able to be flexible with the date because more than likely you're going to want to have the graduation party either have the party the weekend before, or I can do the party the weekend after the birthday, unless the actual birthday falls on a weekend. And then you may say, okay, I want the party on the birthday. If you're a business throwing an event, your event may not have to be on a certain date unless it's if you're throwing for a 1-year anniversary, so you're celebrating your 1-year anniversary of your business being open, or celebrating your 5-year anniversary of your business being open, or if you're trying to put on an event for a cause, and you want to make sure that you do it through in that month that the cause is for. But other than that, you may be able to have some flexibility with your date. Things to take into consideration and to just think about when you are looking at starting to plan an event. And you're also going to have to decide which is more important to you, the date or the venue. And you want to make sure that you have backups as well in case the venue is booked for that day. Remember when I was planning our wedding, I really wanted to get married on October 20th, 2012 at the Embassy Suites. Well, must have been a popular day that nobody told me about because everybody wanted to get married on that day. When we called to try to get the venue, they was like, hey, yeah, sorry, we don't have that date available. I think they had 3 weddings going on that day or something crazy like that. It may not even have all been weddings, but I know that they were completely booked for that day. And so they said, we can offer you October 27th. I didn't want October 27th because October 20th was already in my mind. And once my mind is made up, it takes an act of God to get me to change it. So I was like, no, I don't want October 27th. So started calling around to other venues, trying to see at October 20th available. I have October 20th available. Talking to my now husband, obviously, and like every place is only available on the 27th of October. How do you feel about the 27th of October? And he's like, me if the 27th, trying to figure out where you came up with this date of the 20th from. Said, okay. So we ended up getting our wedding date to the 27th of October, and we actually ended up going with a completely different venue. And we started planning year and a half in advance or something like that, I think. So that just goes to show how quickly stuff books out and how far in advance stuff books out. April, June, and October are definitely really popular months for weddings. So venues usually book out quickly in those months for weddings. And then also you have to think April is prom season. May is graduation season. So April, if you're looking to plan an event in April, you need to start as far out as possible. And also you want to take into consideration the time, because as I said with Embassy Suites Hotel, they had multiple events going on at that day on that day. And you'll find that a lot with hotels or even other venues, because a lot of other venues will have multiple reception rooms inside of them where they are able to host multiple events at one time. So if timing is important to you, then you want to take that into consideration. You want to think about that as well. And you have to decide, okay, if the date that I want is available and the venue that I want is available, am I going to be able to be flexible on the time? If I want to have it from 2 to 6 and they don't have that, am I able to change this to a morning event and make it from 9 to 1? That's something to take into consideration when trying to. Most venues have approved vendor list. Some venues require that you use that approved vendor list. So that means that their approved vendor list can have caterers on it. It can have rental facilities on it for like tables and chairs and tablecloths. It can have DJs on there. It can have security on there, like just any type of vendor that you would need. They have it on their list, and you are required to only use vendors from their list. Not all venues are like that, but some of them are. So if using your own catering company, using your own DJ, if that's something that's important to you, then you need to make sure that you check that prior to paying your deposit and booking that event. Now, if you're a business, you may have a little bit more options for your venue. If you have a storefront and you already know what days and times you're most busiest, you already know if you can close early, if you have enough space to still have your business open, but have the event going on in a separate place. So that will help you out a lot when it comes to choosing a venue. And it'll also save you some money, as we talked about in the last episode when we talked about budgeting. Step 4 is going to be contacting your speakers, presenters, entertainment, caterers, everyone. They book out quickly too because they're in high demand. Someone has to be vendors at all of these events that are going on. So once you get your date and your venue locked in, you want to go ahead and immediately start contacting the vendors that you want and that you need, because a lot of people don't think about stuff like this until the end. Like they may think about the caterer, but they may forget about the DJ, or forget that they need to book a speaker, or forget that they need to call to reserve a bouncy house, or that they need to call to reserve giant yard games. That you need to take into consideration too. And something that you can do, a lot of people have their availability listed online, because a lot of people will have you fill out a form online. And so their availability will be online. So you can check to see how require you to book, how far in advance their schedule usually fills up. You can also check to see if they have the dates that you want available, because that may play a factor into the date that you pick as well. The date and the venue may not even be what's the most important thing to you. The most important thing to you may be having a certain DJ there, or having a certain speaker or presenter there, or being able to use a certain caterer, or have certain activities or events going on at your event. And if that's the case, then you're going to want to check those vendor schedules to see when they're available. And so your date may be completely based off of that. Take that into consideration. And as soon as you know that it's time for you to plan your event, sit down and think about, is the date important? Is the venue important? Or is it more important about what vendors I can get there? And start getting on those calendars. Check with the vendor and find out what their policy is. So if it's important for you to have them there on a certain date and you have not yet gotten a venue, check with your vendor and see, if I put a deposit down for May 14th and my date ends up changing, or I'm unable to get the venue for that date, am I able to move my deposit to a different date? How does that work? In all honesty, I don't recommend putting a deposit down on a vendor until you have, in fact, put your deposit down and confirmed your venue. Because even if that DJ is important to you, you can't, if you don't have a venue, where are you going to have that DJ show up at? So check their calendar, check their availability, check to see how far out they book, And then once you do that, immediately get started with looking for a venue and have backup dates for your vendors, because so it all boils down to what's most important to you, and you just need to think about that. So those were steps 3 and 4. We had choosing your date and your venue, and then booking your speakers, presenters, caterers, DJs, and any other vendors that you need for your event. Next week's episode will conclude this 3-part series on event planning. And next week, we will talk about branding your event and advertising, marketing for it, as well as creating a master plan for your event. So I will talk with you all next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Please make sure to follow and rate the podcast whenever you listen.